Welcome to Mindfulness Manufacturing. My name is Trevor Blondeel. Spending 25 years in manufacturing, I discovered the real impact we have on turnover, communication, and the ability to manage change is how we show up. That's the essence of emotional intelligence. In each episode, we bring a guest or message to expand your skills, engage your people, and grow your organization. So let's jump in. Welcome to Mindfulness Manufacturing. My name is Trevor Blondeel. Spending 25 years in manufacturing, I discovered the real impact we have on turnover, communication, and the ability to manage change is how we show up. That's the essence of emotional intelligence. In each episode, we bring a guest or message to expand your skills, engage your people, and grow your organization. So let's jump in. Manufacturing now, we're looking for more employees, right? Over 400,000 is open right now in 2025. And we're trying to elevate the ones that we have, right? Being more mindful and working with our people. And sometimes, even though we set clear expectations, sometimes we run into difficult situations where maybe some of our staff and our teammates just aren't performing. And so all of a sudden, I'll hear, oh, well, this person is not a good fit. We need to get rid of them. And I don't even like saying that because when a lot of what we talk about on this podcast is just having those deeper conversations. But it happens, and we can't avoid that it doesn't happen. But by listening to this podcast and the friends I bring on, is that you shouldn't have to do that as much. And I found a friend in Christopher Santomassimo, who's been a lawyer for over 30 years. Welcome to the show, Chris.
Thanks, Trevor. It's a pleasure to be on.
So you started in 2009, OGC Solutions, and you've been working with manufacturing companies, and you get a lot of these calls, and you and I had some fun discussions. And the question I was asking you was like, what should we be doing as manufacturers before we're in a panic mode? And that just created some great discussions. So I'm just excited to dive into that with you today.
Same here. Thanks.
So, with all these trends in manufacturing now, we see that the time is now. Like there's going to be more manufacturing in Canada and US. We're going to need more employees in the market. We're going to need to retain and attract. And what I'd like to talk about is just like bringing the best out in the people that we have already. Like those are the best people we have in the building. And you and I started talking about transparent accountability and just being open. So just to kick us off, what's one of the main areas that you see common across your manufacturing clients that you're like, hey, these are the ones that are doing this really well, and they're a lot easier to work with?
Thanks, Trevor. Just by way of background, so there's a tiny bit of context, we act as the outside general counsel which is basically a fractional legal department experience for our clients. So we replicate what it's like to have a legal department at a much bigger company. And as a result, we get really close to our clients and we counsel on lots of things that go beyond what a traditional lawyer might counsel on. We get really deep into the business. And in every single manufacturing client and beyond manufacturing as well, personnel issues really are at the top of the list, both in terms of the amount of time that's devoted to them, the amount of activity that we get involved in, and the amount of risk, really. And what we try to do is help clients manage risk more in a preventive way, but also in a more positive way, frankly. And I find that the companies that think about the employee life cycle in a more positive way, in holding people accountable in also a positive way, sharing with them in really deeper conversations about what the company goals are, setting goals for the manufacturing units and the individual people. Those people are much more productive as employees, and I think the companies are much more productive on a corporate level as a result because everybody is more engaged in a team atmosphere.
Yeah, and one of the things you and I talked about was, accountability. Some leaders that I was just working with a couple weeks ago they're a little hesitant, right? Like to give a letter of expectations, like not even going through HR or anything. And got to a situation where we had to do that. And that manager gave a letter of expectations, and that supervisor, who was someone that they were talking about, I don't know if it's going to be a good fit, is now like rising to the occasion. And it's like, oh my goodness, just with this transparent accountability. So it can be positive. And what I found interesting was it's actually building trust. Accountability can actually build trust.
And I think that's true, but I think it's also about how you put in place some accountability within an organization, especially in manufacturing, because you've got, different tiers, as you know, of employees. You've got people on the floor. You even have people doing maintenance and sweeping the floor, et cetera. But you've got sort of a group of folks that are maybe going to be high school educated, maybe a little bit of community college, et cetera, or people that just really like to be in that environment. And then you've got the supervisors and the managers, directors, depending on how big the company is. But at each level, I've seen the employees want something to work towards. They need something to manage themselves towards. Um, when you set expectations, if you if you impose those expectations more in a team atmosphere, like, hey, we're going to get together and we're going to go, and here's what we need to hit each day, each week, each quarter, the right people in that organization, to your point, are going to rise up and manage toward those goals. And what you tend to see is this team atmosphere, a little bit like a football team, where everybody gets together and moving in the same direction. And the folks that may be a little reticent, a little bit, they might not have that initially have that team approach or that ability to work in a team environment. They get sort of swept along with the rest of the team. And, unfortunately, sometimes people get filtered out of that kind of a organization because they just can't get on the train. But more often than not, I think people do want to succeed. They want to be productive. They want to be part of that successful team. And as a result, they're going to come along a lot more easily. Um, that's as contrasted with, a sort of a negative
Mm.
implementation. Like, you guys are just not doing the job. You stink. You're terrible. Blah blah blah. And you better hit these goals or else. Well, people don't like that. They don't like to.
Oh,
They don't like that lightning bolt coming down from on high and striking them and saying, you're not good. You're not anything. It's a hurt to the ego individually. It hurts the team atmosphere, and then people stop caring, quite frankly. But you know, in a much more positive way, where you can share numbers and be transparent, to your point, set realistic goals, set stretch goals, even on a daily basis, in terms of, how many units are we going to ship today, or how many units are we going to manufacture today, and hit those numbers. And even, I've seen clients or other companies that aren't even clients post those numbers up on a screen every day so that people can look up and say, man, I'm a little bit behind. I better hit that number, just for my own feeling of self-worth, and people really want to, in general, people want to really do the job, that they were brought in for, because there's going to be some reward at the end of the day, quarter, year, whether it's financial, whether it's promotion, a feeling of worth, a feeling of success every single day, where you get excited to come back the next day. Makes it a little less routine for people. It gives them something, again, to not just sort of work through the motions, but to do the job. And then I've found that positivity and that transparency and that goal setting really filters in a positive way toward the risk issues that you have to confront sometimes. The folks that are, working along with a team, they're getting coached by their coworkers or their supervisors. Things are being handled on the floor if there's errors, and people are, it's less about you made an error and more about, hey, let's fix that for next time, let's avoid that, the pat on the back, let's go. It's not the end of the world. All of that sort of filters into a lot of positivity, where those routine HR issues that you have to deal with become fewer and fewer in number. The risk profile then drops. The amount of activity in terms of legal issues and insurance issues, even even employee injuries on the floor, and reportable events in that regard, those things tend to shrink, and the company's in a much better place from a productivity and a legal risk standpoint as a result. And everything sort of capitalizes on itself.
yeah. And this is the thinking that I want the listeners to have. For someone that's been doing this for over 30 years, like it's inspiring to hear that, Chris, because sometimes I feel like I'm this crazy person talking to this executive team that just wants to hit their budget and their cost savings and their numbers.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, that's the outcome. And if we just hold people accountable to that, that's not helpful. Like, and I also like what you're saying about the winning, right? Like I really enjoy playing old timers hockey, and we go on some tournaments, and sometimes the prize is a t-shirt, like, and it's still exciting because it's just good to win, like win the day, like how like what's winning the day look like for me? And so like an example I was thinking of is just shop floor boards got to be kept up to a certain standard, right? It's just kind of manufacturing,
Hmm.
visual management, and even with all the technology, it's still nice to have some handwritten boards, right, of what are the problems and what's going on. And some of the leadership team was getting hit pretty hard because they had so many priorities and the board wasn't really being done properly. And then it was just kind of like, let's break this down a little bit. Let's walk together through the boards. Like, what does good look like to you? And that whole, like, the situational leadership that we talk about, like, in this situation, this person is going to do a lot better if I spend some time with this person. Hey, how do you coach the boards? Like, if a team member's not filling it out, how do you have that conversation? And it's like, and all of a sudden, these boards just started getting filled out. And it was like a muscle, right? If we can have some transparent accountability, then that's going to build more trust. That's going to build more, like you said, better safety, better productivity. And then the leader, calls in the next day on his day off and saying, "Hey, how are my boards?" Like, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Are you seeing some of those trends? Is that what you're coaching your clients towards, Chris?
Well, you know what the way I would translate that, what you just said, is into listening to your people. Um, just, that we talked about, sharing numbers and goal setting and all of that as being, part of sort of the ethos of a successful company where you're sharing with people not only the what, but the why. Like, why do we need to hit that number? Let's hit it every day. Let's hit it every week, whatever it is. But I also think at the same time, people need to feel appreciated. And that doesn't mean throwing money at them all the time as much as it means listening to them. Because no matter how smart you are as a manager, you're never going to know everything that goes on the floor. Because the people that are the operators and the mechanics and the folks working in the warehouse are doing the job every day. And first of all, they see the problems and they see the issues, but if they don't feel like they're being heard, they just won't share it. They'll just develop whatever workarounds they need to do to get through the day, and they go home. I've seen a couple of companies that really reward people for raising issues like that. There's one company that I can think of that has what they call a wall of fame, and they've been doing it for years. And this, I can't even estimate, it's got to be a couple 100 feet of wall outside their manufacturing floor is filled with photos of all of the employees that came up with an idea on the floor that was worth something, and there's a lot of them, and they get a
Mm.
reward. They actually get $100 bill, and they get their picture taken, and they're up on the wall. And you can be on the wall as many times as you have ideas. Well, people are really looking for stuff, and not just making stuff up to get a $100 bill, but they want to be recognized. And I think that's one example of demonstrating not only to the individual who raised the idea that you're being heard, but to the rest of the workforce that we want you to be heard. We want to listen to what you say. Um, and it also sort of increases the happiness among the population. Again, it's not all about money, although that's nice too. And that's why we work at the end of the day. But to feel like you're part of the organization in a deeper way, even though you're an operator on the floor, is really special, I think, to people. And I think it motivates them to want to stay at the company, to your point about finding employees, which is not easy. That's also one of the most difficult things in the manufacturing environment is finding and retaining quality people because people bounce around a lot. They're going to look for the next, better wage if they don't have some other reason to stay, right? I'm not saying you don't have to be competitive with wages, but at the same time, people want to stay in a place where they want to come to work and feel like they're part of a family or a team or working together, and they don't fight on the floor, they don't argue. There's not a lot of dissatisfaction on the floor. And when there is, it gets corrected at the floor level, as opposed to getting up to the HR people or the executive leadership team. People on a successful team pick each other up or let each other know when when you're doing something that's just not okay. And people kind of take care of what they want to be able to take care of their own environment when they care about it. If they don't care about it, that's when everything goes to HR, or in a union environment, that's where everything shows up in a grievance, where people are just mad and they're angry and they don't feel like, anybody cares. So if you can, it sounds like a monumental thing, but it's really not. You got to start
Mhm.
somewhere to sort of bring people together in a way that is meaningful to them as well as the company at the same time.
I like that. On a successful team, people will pick each other up, right? And success means that we're working together, that I'm definitely succeeding in what's in my control. Sometimes we will have a mechanical issue or a customer issue that becomes sometimes out of our direct control. But if we can focus on that, like what are my expectations? What am I in control of? And then kind of get that positive, get some wins and kind of build off that. It is just fundamental. So do you have like longer term clients that kind of have this practice that are having some more success? And then on the other extreme, then do you get some people that like just haven't been exposed to this as much and then you help them kind of progress, or how does it work?
Yeah, we have clients all across the board, and the folks that have more difficulties when it comes to HR are not necessarily doing a bad job either. Even in the best organizations, you're still going to have people that have bad days, or they have, or you hire somebody who's just not right for the role. They're frustrated, they're not happy, or maybe they have personal things that are impacting their job. So no place is going to be absolutely perfect. But what you want is a place where it's pretty good most of the time. And I think that, one thing I've seen is that some companies are afraid to share numbers with their folks, um, because they're afraid that, people are going to expect more, expect to get paid more, or they're going to, somehow hold it against the owners of the company. The more successful ones have tweaked that paradigm a little bit to say, that I need to hit 1,000 units every day to make sure that not only do I have a job, but this company continues to be doing well, or else there's not going to be anything here, right? We got to pay for this really nice equipment that we had that the company bought, or we got this building that I'm working in. All of those things, they kind of understand it, and they almost forget that the goals are directed toward productivity and profits. Of course, they're more focused on that's my number, right? I can't control anything else, but I can control that number.
Hmm.
And if I got to work a little harder in the afternoon because we were slow getting started in the morning, they seem to do that. Um, so sharing the numbers and setting goals on an individual and a team or department basis, I think is really part of the recipe for success. And again, sharing some of those numbers. You don't have to tell them the balance of your bank account, but the numbers that are meaningful to them are the ones that you share, and
I
explain
mean,
as
yeah,
well.
yeah, yeah. We miss that, right? We miss the importance of it. We think, oh, they just care about their paycheck, but that's not true.
I don't think
That's not
so.
true. They
I
want to be
don't think
part
so.
of a team. They want to be part of a team. They want to know what, how does this connect to what I'm doing every day? And they want to know, like, am I working for a company in a good situation? Like, if if you're thinking we don't want to share how successful we are, no, because they might stay and want to be a part of this more. Like, like it's ironic when sometimes we get in the mindset, right, about maybe we shouldn't share this, but it's the whole like it's transparency, right? Like, what's the risk of the truth? What's the risk of people knowing where they stand on expectations, where the company is at, and how they're doing, right? Like, hey, I'd like to know how I'm doing. It's nice. It's nice to know that I won today.
Yeah, everybody needs to know. And they also need to know when they lose too. Maybe you have got a bad
Yes.
day where the equipment went down, and we just couldn't hit the number. People are probably going to feel bad about that, or maybe the mechanic's going to work a little faster to try and get the machine back up. Um, but I also find that a lot of the negativity that you deal with on the HR and legal side comes out of sort of frustration, or a lot of repetitive work that happens in the manufacturing environment. If people are just coming in for the beginning of their shift, and they're just, you know, they're just doing whatever their function is as an operator. Um, it becomes a little mind-numbing sometimes. You need something else that's going to drive you besides making sure that the products get made and put in a box and shipped, right? And it's that frustration, and then sometimes the conditions, it gets hot in the summer and cold in the winter in some places, that kind of a thing. Well, people can get past that a little bit more if they have sort of an influence to make them want to be there. Again, not just for a paycheck. And I find that, the when people start to get out of line, when people argue with each other, or I've seen fights on the manufacturing floor sometimes, where they're doing things during their break that they shouldn't do. Uh,
Mm,
that's because of that frustration, or needing an escape from what they're doing all day long, and also not feeling like they're part of a team. You know, like the cannabis issue is the cannabis being legalized in a lot of jurisdictions has been a big deal for companies in terms of how to handle it and how
hmm.
to address it when people violate the policies, like they go out and use cannabis products during their lunch hour.
Right.
Not okay for lots of reasons. But I see a lot less of it when there's people that are, again, working toward whatever that goal is, and they're managing each other, right? You don't want to be the guy that comes back
Ah,
from lunch smelling like they smoked pot in their car, because your coworkers are going to get on you. Forget about what the manager might hear or see or smell. So you don't want to disappoint your teammates more than disappointing your manager. That becomes more important, I think.
boom. That's brilliant. Right. Because we lose sight of that, right? We think, well, we gotta hold people accountable, and we gotta write them up, and it's like, so I really appreciate what you're bringing to manufacturing, Chris, right? Like the whole, our mindsets are very aligned. And I really believe that North America can do so much more manufacturing. And even with the people that they have, because what you and I are talking about right now is that, yes, we need to hire more people, but we have untapped resources in the people we have there today, just by like bringing out a little bit more in them and making the whole team atmosphere. And it's interesting when I talk to corporate executives, they're not asking, a lot of them aren't asking those questions.
Right.
They're not walking into a plant and saying, huh, like I should talk to some team members, kind of like, do they have what they need? Do they know what winning is? How do they get recognized? We start at the top on the spreadsheet and say, well, we need to hire. I usually hear about supervisors, right? It's the supervisors. They carry all the load.
Right.
It's kind of like you can't put it all on the supervisors. Like, yes, the supervisor is responsible for creating the culture on that shift and that transparent accountability and doing all that. But then, how are you coaching them? And then are you going to some of their team meetings? Are you sitting in on some of their conversations? They probably want to have a team that's engaged, and they might need a little bit of help on how to do it in a more positive way.
Yeah, and creating less of a penal system with all those things, because a penal system where you're penalizing somebody for a mistake and you're writing up a memo that they have to sign and sit down with HR, sometimes that's not the right way to do it. Although I always counsel clients to make sure you're keeping, contemporaneous notes about things that happen because it might become relevant later. But I think it's about, training your managers to be problem solvers and take the temperature down when there's a problem and an issue and help people solve it in a constructive way. That's going to relieve a lot of the tension, because if you come in swinging a billy club into every situation and start assigning blame, well, that's not going to really help. And people, as soon as they get written up, some people will for something, some people will think that they're on their way out, and I don't think that's what you want. You want to coach them into the organization, not coach them out. And also, you mentioned efficiency too, which, especially in the manufacturing environment, I can't think of anything that is just as important as efficiency. Um, some companies, I think, they will hire an engineer to come in and say, "Hey, I got this hodgepodge manufacturing environment that grew over time, and we expanded the building, and we've kind of put stuff where it fits, but it's not working all that well." Well, before you hire an engineer to tell you all that stuff, you ought to bring your people in and say, "Tell me how you do your job every single day." And what I think you're going to hear are some of the funky workarounds that people do because they're not given the right tools or the right
Mhm.
processes or whatever it is. Uh, and if you ask people like, how can we do it better? Or if you just looked over this manufacturing floor from up on with a drone or whatever it is to see it, how would you move the pieces around? And I think you're going to get a lot better information just from that rather than bringing in an outsider to tell you what your people already know. And they're going to be invested in the process too.
Yeah, yeah. It seems like you and I have worked together for 30 years.
Hmm.
But maybe 30 years ago, I wasn't doing it as well. I had to make some mistakes along the way and just be more curious. Like what you were saying on we get focused on just nailing down the problem, but like what is the solution here? Let's talk about that. And I believe that, if we can do that up front, we do it consistently. I appreciate what you're saying with the other team members will also pick things up. Like well, that goes at every level, manager level, supervisor, team leader, team member, same area. If you're consistent accountability and 80% of the team's winning, 20% of the team is going to get on board, or then that might be another path. And then that's the
Yeah.
good choice. But it's not because we didn't give them the opportunity. We can all win in manufacturing. And we have to do this now. Because once that big wheel gets turning, like at a bigger plant, sometimes it's hard to turn that around, and you need some help. So what to leave the listeners with here? Like, what's one area, Chris, that you're like, man, like you've got some great relationships, you got some great clients, and you help people. And when people come to you, what's the one area you think, man, here's something you should be doing now that maybe they're not doing? What's manufacturing need to do in your eyes?
Yeah, I think it varies by organization, but I think it all comes back to managing by numbers and realizing that efficiency and managing by numbers doesn't mean just reducing workforce periodically to cut down your payroll numbers. I think people need to think about things holistically, frankly, and also set the goals about what is the company trying to achieve other than making more money. How do we do better as a company? And as a result, how can we trickle that down to the employees? But how do the employees sort of trickle back up to the company's success? And if you think about it more holistically, like I said, and you bring people on um, intentionally, but also show them a path toward that goal for the company, but also for themselves. How do they rise within the organization? How do they get to do more and better things? I think you're gonna have a sort of a synergistic success. All of those things kind of come together, and my job again is to reduce the risk profile for a company. So I want to see things that are going to lessen the chance that bad things are going to happen, and it usually
Mhm.
involves again more positive things that all kind of work together, have help the company reach their financial goals, but also create more of a cohesiveness among their employees.
It's funny when you and I met, I kind of joked, right? Like I'm kind of in the business of giving you less business, right? Because we're going to have more conversations. But then when I got to know you, it's like, oh, he's doing the same thing. Like we're 100% aligned, and there is aspects to that which you provide clients, and I don't know anything about legal, and I just know about being what it takes to be a leader, to engage. And I just appreciate that there's people like you out in the industry that you take away any stereotypes of what a lawyer might come across as is you break those, and I appreciate just
I
your
appreciate it.
your openness and your positivity towards the industry, because we need us, and we just like a plant, we need to pull each other and be successful and pull each other up. How do the listeners, how do we leave them, like how do they follow you? Or I know you've got a podcast, and so tell us about the best way for our listeners to connect with you, Chris.
Well, Trevor, again, thank you so much for the opportunity. We have another thing in common about our podcast. Ours is called The Think Factory, thethinkfactory.com, as well as five of the platforms you can find us and listen to us. And we'd invite your listeners that want to share thoughts about leadership or observations about a business or the economy in general, or what makes them differentiate themselves from other companies and what's been the recipe for their success.
Hmm.
We'd love to hear from them and join us on the podcast. And our website is called ogcsolutions.com. You can always reach us there as well.
Right on. And I'll leave those links in the show notes, and people can connect with you that way and pick up your podcast as well. And yeah, I feel good today leaving you, Chris, because it's like, okay, I didn't even know you, but we are working together. And thanks so much for coming on the show.
See, I hope this was an example of how people can actually feel better after they talk to a lawyer rather than worse. So that's a good thing.
You're awesome.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Trevor.
Hey folks, appreciate you taking the time to join us today. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with someone. Haven't subscribed yet? Do it now. Remember, if you want results, the key is increasing your awareness of how you show up.